Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really peeling back the layers on American daily life.
Yeah, it's a fascinating topic.
Think about it for a second. Everyone around you, people across the country, what are they doing, like, right now?
hmm Are they commuting? Making coffee?
It's
Still
so
sleeping?
exactly. And how does your own day, your routine, fit into this huge collective pattern?
It's kind of mind-boggling when you think about it on that scale.
So our mission today is to explore that, combining this big data picture with a really personal story. We want to give you a new perspective, maybe a surprising one.
And we've got two really different sources to help us do that, right?
We do. First, there's A Day in the Life of Americans by Nathan Yao over at Flowing Data. That's the data-driven side.
Right, the big picture simulation. And then,
And then we have something completely different, a blog post, A Typical Day in My Life from the Carleton Admissions blog. It's written by a student, Sherry Zhang.
so the broad strokes and then the fine detail. Data versus personal experience. It's a great combo.
Definitely. Okay, so let's start with that macro view, A Nation in Motion. Nathan Yao's work. It's not just your standard stats, is it?
No, not at all. He wasn't satisfied with just saying, like, 40% of young adults are working at 3 p.m. That's useful, sure, but it doesn't capture the flow.
The flow, what do you mean?
He wanted to see how individual days actually unfold minute by minute and how all those individual paths add up to create the bigger patterns we see.
Okay, but how on earth do you simulate something like that? Millions of people's days.
Well, that's the ingenious part. He used microdata from the 2014 American Time Use Survey, the ATOS.
ATOS, I've heard of that. They ask people to detail their entire day, right?
Exactly. So Yaodu took that data and simulated a single day for 1,000 Americans. Importantly, this group was chosen to be representative of the whole U.S. population.
1,000 people representing everyone.
Okay.
And minute by minute.
Yep. He basically built these transition matrices, 1,440 of them, one for every minute of the day. It modeled the probability of someone switching activities.
Wow. So, like, the chance of going from sleeping to making coffee at 6:25 a.m. versus 6:16 a.m.
Pretty much. It's modeled as it's called a time-varying Markov chain,
Oh.
essentially tracking the flow between states, sleeping, working, eating, leisure, you name it.
And the visualization, you mentioned it was mesmerizing. How did he show this flow?
Imagine watching 1,000 dots on a screen. Each dot is a person,
Okay.
and the color of the dot tells you what they're doing. As they change activities, the dot moves to a different area on the screen, representing that new activity.
So you visually see people moving from, say, the sleep area to the commute area.
Precisely. It starts at 4 a.m. when most dots are, firmly in the sleep zone. Very little movement.
Like the whole country's holding its breath
Kind of, yeah. But then you watch as the clock ticks towards morning,
and things start happening.
big time. Around 7 a.m., he says it's like people are off to the races. You see this surge of activity.
So what are some of those key moments, those big shifts he observed in the simulation?
Well, that early morning period, say 6:30 a.m. to 7:30 a.m., is peak time for waking up, obviously. And personal care, showering, getting dressed.
The morning rush?
Right.
Oh.
And then you see the dots scatter. Some move to work, some to eating breakfast, some relaxing, maybe housework.
Makes sense. What about later in the day? Lunch.
Lunch is huge. Between noon and 1:00 p.m., there's this massive coordinated shift. Dots just flood from work or housework into the eating and drinking zone.
It's like a collective pause.
It really is. And then, often, they flow back to work, or maybe some shift to leisure.
And the end of the workday, around 5 p.m.
Oh, yeah. Totally predictable. Another big wave of movement as people leave work, head towards traveling, presumably home, and then into food prep and eating dinner.
The evening commute and dinner rush.
You got it. And then later on, say 10:00 p.m. to midnight, you see the final winding down. Dots moving from leisure, watching TV, maybe into personal care, and then finally settling back into the sleep area.
It paints such a vivid picture of this collective rhythm. It really makes you think, doesn't it? How does my own day or your day listening map onto that?
Exactly. Do you fit the pattern? Or are you an outlier? Which brings us perfectly to our micro view.
Right, let's zoom right in. From 1,000 simulated Americans to one specific student, Sherry Zhang at Carleton College.
Yeah, and she wrote this great blog post for the admissions office. It's interesting when she starts off saying, the classic, there's no typical day.
As a Carleton student, yeah, you hear that a lot about college life.
But then almost immediately, she says she's actually a creature of habit and prefers having a routine.
Huh. I think a lot of us can relate to that, needing some structure amidst the flexibility. So what does her typical Monday or Wednesday look like?
Okay, so she gets up at 7:30 a.m. She says it's early, but it's for her 8:30 a.m. class, which she calls her 1A class.
Her first class period.
Right. And she mentions she's a morning person, so it works for her. Then around 8 a.m., she heads to the Burton Dining Hall.
Breakfast time. What's her usual?
Sounds like pancakes or French toast, some cereal, maybe tea. She notes it's pretty busy that early.
And sometimes she skips it.
Yeah, for an extra 15 minutes of sleep. A classic student trade-off. Right?
Totally. Then class.
Yep. 8:40 to 9:40 a.m., 70 minutes. She jokes about trying to stay awake.
Been there.
Then a quick break, and her second class is 9:40 to 11:000 a.m. in a different building. Anderson Hall, just a short walk away.
Okay, so morning classes are done by 11. Then what?
She does what she calls light work. Things like checking emails, prepping for other courses, making to-do lists, kind of administrative stuff.
Keeping organized. Smart. Lunch.
Around 12:00 p.m., she meets friends at a different dining hall, the LDC Language and Dining Center. She says it's less crowded then.
Interesting. And then more class.
Just one more for the day. French class, conveniently right there in the LDC building
Right.
from 12:40 to 1:40 p.m.
So classes are done by mid-afternoon.
Right. And then at 2 p.m., she does something really interesting. She finds a quiet spot, often back in Anderson Hall, and takes a strategic nap.
A power nap to recharge.
Exactly. To re-energize for the rest of the afternoon and evening's work. Pretty clever, I think.
Definitely. What about the evening?
Dinner's around 6:00 p.m., back at Burton Dining Hall with friends again. She mentions that even with takeout options being popular, people still like eating together in the halls.
That social aspect is important.
For sure. Then 7:00 p.m., it's back to her dorm. She does some chores and then settles in for more work. Homework. Studying.
The main grind of the evening. Until when?
She aims for sleep around 11:30 p.m. Tries to get a solid 8 hours, sometimes reads a bit to help wind down.
That's a pretty packed, structured day. What about her days off class, Tuesdays and Thursdays? Does she relax?
Not exactly. She makes a point of saying those days are just as busy, filled with homework, going to office hours, maybe working a campus job, catching up on readings. She says she finds herself just as occupied.
Wow, so it's a constant cycle of work and managing her time?
Seems like it. But she ends with this nice message for prospective students, basically saying you control how much work you take on, and you can find a work-life balance here.
That's a hopeful note. It puts the agency back on the student.
Yeah. And it really makes you reflect,
Yeah.
How does her very specific planned out day compare to your own routine? Or maybe what you remember college being like?
It does. And now we can try to weave these two threads together, right? The big simulation and Sherry's individual day.
This is where it gets really insightful, I think. You start comparing.
So how does Sherry's routine line up with Yao's big patterns?
Well, in many ways, it fits right in. Her general phases, waking, eating meals, blocks of work or study, winding down for sleep, they mirror the collective flow Yao visualized.
Her meal times, for instance.
Spot on. Her lunch around noon, dinner around 6 p.m. Those fall right into the peak times seen in the simulation for eating. It shows how powerful those social rhythms are.
But she's not just a statistic, obviously. Where does her day diverge?
Good point. There are definitely individual choices and deviations, like her 7:30 a.m. wake-up. That's a bit earlier than the main surge Yao saw around 7 a.m., so she's part of that early cohort.
And the nap.
The nap. Yeah, that's a perfect example of a personal strategy. You wouldn't see napping at 2 p.m. in Anderson Hall in the broad ATUS categories, but it's a key part of her rhythm, her way of managing energy.
So the simulation gives us the orchestra playing the symphony of the day.
Right, the overall music, the tempo changes.
While Sherry's story gives us the experience of one musician playing their part, maybe adding their own little flourishes.
That's a great analogy. The data shows the collective dance, the averages, the flows. Sherry's narrative gives that dance a face, a motivation. Why she chooses the early class, where she finds a quiet nap spot, those personal choices within the bigger structure.
It really highlights the value of having both views, doesn't it? The macro and the micro.
Absolutely. You need both to get a richer understanding. The flowing data work shows what America, in aggregate, is doing. Sherry shows how one American, in her specific context, navigates her day, making choices within those larger currents.
We see the pattern and we see the person within the pattern.
Beautifully put. We are both swept along by these daily tides, these societal rhythms, but we're also steering our own small boats, making our own way.
So, wrapping up this deep dive, we've really seen this fascinating dance, haven't we? Between the huge, almost unconscious collective routines of a nation.
and the very conscious, deliberate choices and habits of one individual trying to navigate her day effectively.
We saw the big data waves and Sherry paddling through them.
Yeah. Leaves you with a final thought to chew on, maybe.
Go on.
Well, when you see these incredibly detailed, often predictable patterns playing out across millions of lives, how much of your own day is shaped by those big, invisible rhythms?
And how much is truly your own design, something you've consciously created?
Exactly. And maybe take it one step further. How does your own personal search for, say, work-life balance, like Sherry talked about?
How does that quest fit in? Does it just conform to the collective flow, or could it maybe subtly change it somehow?
It's something to ponder as you go about the rest of your day, navigating your own part of that intricate, shared rhythm.